What I decided I want to do today is break down a customer case study a little bit, because I think there's some interesting lessons in there and some examples of like how this whole thing can work. And it's definitely also, I learned a couple things from it. So I'm going to break that down and then we can have a Q&A afterwards. I have a couple other things. I could talk about like some adjustments that I'm making to my own content strategy in this year. So I have there a couple notes on that, but let's get rolling with the case study here. And you guys can jump in at any point if you guys have questions. You can both drop them in the chat or just unmute yourself, because I want this to be kind of interactive and useful. So don't feel shy. Let me share my screen here. Boom. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Fredrik Björk. So this is a customer, Fredrik Björk. He is the founder and CEO at Grafbase, and Grafbase is a B2B SaaS company, early stage. It's a GraphQL federation platform. It's a super, super technical product. Their ICP is VPs of engineering at large financial services companies, so 1,000 and plus employees. Fredrik previously was the CTO at The RealReal, which is a publicly traded company. They have, I think, 2,500 employees. And he was the person kind of leading the efforts internally at The RealReal of moving their API infrastructure from REST to GraphQL. So he is really a deep subject matter expert. He is his ICP. He is, how do I make sure that I still see people joining here? I'll put this over here. And he's a user. In a sense, he built this product to scratch his own itch, right? So that's a really great, I would say, foundation if you're gonna do thought leadership, founder-led marketing, this sort of stuff. Because let me figure out. There we go. Okay. Right, because in the end, the goal is to create relevant, insightful content for your customers and ICPs. And so you need to have relevant expertise. And you get that expertise either by having been that person previously in your career. If you sell to VPs of support of mid-market companies, were you previously a VP of support at a mid-market company, right? If you sell to HR directors in manufacturing, were you previously an HR director in manufacturing? That's one way. Another way could also obviously be that you are the user of your own product. This is, for example, what we are in a sense, because I use LinkedIn. I create content on LinkedIn. We use LinkedIn to get customers for ourselves. And this is what we do for people, right? And so we're a user of our own product in a sense. So lots of insights come there, even though I'm not my ICP. I'm not a SaaS founder, right? So that also works. I would say a third avenue is that you talk to a ton of your customers. All right. Anyway, so this is the customer. We started creating content with Fredrik in July this year. Last year, I guess. We're in 2025 now. What I wanted to do here is go to his post, and you can see through some of it. We create both text and written posts. I would say the most common content pillars are, technical updates about their products, so new feature releases. This is, for example, an example here. They launched tracing for their product, and here we have a little video of Fredrik sharing why they built this feature, why it's important to CTOs, why he wished he had it in his previous role as a CTO. Another content pillar is obviously things he learned previously as a CTO from implementing GraphQL and moving from REST to GraphQL. Another big pillar is conversations that he's having with prospects and customers and insights from that. And so if this maybe finally loaded, there we go. Hey, all right. So you guys can see in the last 6 months, we posted 50 pieces of content, and we got 250,000 impressions in total. So roughly 5,000 impressions per post. Reactions, comments, shares, whatever. You can see here our best performing post that we created was this one, 60,000 impressions, 440 likes. I can pull it up here. This is more of like a building in public, type of post, right? We kind of break down like a company offsite that they did with their company, why they did it, how they did it, why he spent $50,000 on it, the agenda, the ROI, features that they built as a result of the brainstorming that happened at one of these offsites. So, it's more like, founder story, building in public. There's still insights and lessons in it. It's not a selfie. So in terms of business pipeline, this didn't really do much for them. I know that they got a couple people kind of applying and saying, hey, do you have any open, job offers from engineers? Because obviously people were like, oh, that's cool. I would like to work at this company. But here's a post that I wanted to share, which is, if I scroll down here a little bit, 2 months ago, this one. So this post here, the hook is, I recently talked with a VP of engineering at a Fortune 500 financial services company, 10,000 plus engineers. Their team is currently in the process of moving from REST to GraphQL. Here are the 3 reasons he told me why he's doing it, broken down, point 1, point 2, point 3, little wrap up. Now, if you look at these engagement numbers, it's actually not that great. By the way, what did Ishan, you said what? What did you say what to? Um, and it's actually below the average of the posts that we've been creating, right? But the important thing is when you go to shares, you'll see that we got this person to share this post. And if we now pull up this little post and this reshare, this person reshared it saying, very interesting topic. Would love to hear the views of others who've debated this topic. Now, this person turns out to be the CTO at PaySafe, which is a financial services company with 3,600 employees. So this is a perfectly matching ICP for them. We got more people joining. Nice. Now, obviously, this person has a strong network of peers who are very similar to him. So you can see here in the comments, we actually got some really in-depth engagement on this post, super technical, super in-depth, like people really sharing their thoughts on this point of view. And turns out that a lot of these people are super relevant because it was shared by a CTO of a financial services company. And so this person is the VP of engineering at a financial services company with, I think, 2,600 employees. This person is the ex-VP of engineering, of software engineering at MasterCard, currently advising companies. And this person is the senior director of product engineering at a financial services company with 8,600 employees. So, again, this is four perfectly matching ICPs of target accounts. And given that they are in such a small niche, there's probably only 5,000 companies in the world who could buy their product. They have like a, super large ACV, around 500,000, 500K ACV. So super, super valuable. Obviously, Fredrik was then able to insert himself naturally in that conversation here, replying to people, and then if there is interest, taking it further from there into a one-on-one on a call, etc. Now, this is obviously super valuable. I think what is really interesting for me, and I think that is the thing that that a lot of people don't look at, is it's really not the amount of likes and comments. It is really everything about resonance, and resonance specifically with your ICP. Because again, if we had just looked at how many likes did this post get, we would have been like, oh, this is a below average performing post. Let's not talk about this more. And let's talk more about, this, where did I have it? This cultural topics, building in public around doing offsites and why you do offsites and why you hire people and all this stuff. But that's not really the point, right? And so that's why I would say we are very big on prioritizing depth of insight and communicating technical expertise and quality rather than optimizing for top level impressions, likes, etc., because it can very easily lead you down the wrong rabbit hole. Now, a couple things about this post on why I think it did so well is because, number one, it came out of a real conversation that happened with, again, someone who perfectly matches their ICP. So this is, this is coming from the VP of engineering at one of the largest financial services company in the US. And it's kind of a recap of that conversation. You need someone who actually has access to these insights and these people, right? It's not made out of thin air. I think the hook is pretty strong too, right? We included some numbers in here. We got very specific with who this is for. And this is hyper relevant for them because this topic is directly in the problem space of what they're solving with their product, right? Because it's a GraphQL federation platform. And this post is talking about moving from REST to GraphQL. We could have had another post where we talk about, hey, here's the insights from a VP of engineering at a large enterprise about, how they're using AI tools in their, QA process. And that might have been a really interesting thought leadership post, but it doesn't sit within the problem space of what they're solving with their product, right? So even if you get engagement and attention on that thing, it's going to be a great top of funnel post that might get some relevant people into your funnel and into your space and connected with you, but it will not directly lead to a conversation of like, hey, how about we explore your product and how we could use it? Now that's one thing. The second thing is, once you I think one of the bigger mistakes that people make with LinkedIn, and this is what we're trying to solve and help customers with, is that there's a power law where 10% of your posts drive 90% of the outcomes. And those outcomes can be engagement, reach, but also inbound conversations, opportunities, right? It's a small amount of posts that do most of the work, right? Pareto principle. And so what most people do is they just post ongoingly, whatever, once a week, 3 times a week. And then some posts do better than others. But either way, they just keep posting. And they never do a retrospective of understanding what are those 10% of posts that drive most of the outcomes. Because once you have something like this post where you have very clear qualitative signals that it's clearly resonating with your ICP, what you should do is to go all in on this messaging. And so, for example, what we started doing is that with this post, we're now running LinkedIn ads, thought leader ads, towards all of their target accounts and all of their ICPs, because we now have proof that clearly this message is resonating with people. The second thing that we realized is that through the conversations is that it was really this third point that really resonated with people. The idea essentially being that for financial services companies specifically, there will be more and more and more AI agents that will be interfacing with their API, with their publicly facing API. And moving from a REST to a GraphQL infrastructure is what will allow you to future-proof your company to allow these AI agents to easily find and interact with your API. Anyway, it's a very technical point, but it is a point that goes way beyond the LinkedIn post that might generate some conversations. It's really information on positioning and product and messaging that now that they know this, they can, we started creating a bunch of, follow-up and more in-depth posts on that specific message around, moving from REST to GraphQL to future-proof with the emergence of AI agents. But it also allows them to update their website messaging, their product messaging, their pitch. So it's a lot of data. And I'll stop sharing here. I think this is something that I see over and over and over again with customers, but also with other people who I talk to on this podcast, which is that the people who are really successful in making LinkedIn and this thought leadership content stuff a business driver and a real success are those people who see it as a business activity rather than a marketing activity. So instead of just seeing LinkedIn as an isolated channel where you publish some posts every now and then you wait for inbound. And you hope for someone to just find a LinkedIn post and come to your website and book a demo. If that's how you think about LinkedIn, it's probably not how you will really make this a successful motion, right? The people who are successful with this understand that, of course, yes, I want to put out content and hope that we get some inbound who come to our website. And I want to be proactive about identifying people who engage with my content, like it, share it, visit my profile, identify ICPs within that, and then go outbound to them, connect with them, send them an email, maybe cold call them, maybe invite them to a webinar that we have coming up. It's the people who, actively make a list of their customers, previous customers, and active opportunities, and have their founder connect to those people through their LinkedIn account so that the content starts then also being shown to these very specific people, and not just hope that random people find it on their feed. It's the people who leverage these insights, like I just showed, to update their messaging, to update their product, to update their pitch, to update their website. It's the people who, once they found a LinkedIn post that performed really well, who then leverage it and squeeze it. They run ads on that post, and they start creating, say, okay, well, clearly this idea of moving from REST to GraphQL as a way to future-proof your company in the emergence of AI agents is something that resonates. How about we now host a webinar around this exact topic, but just go a lot more in depth into that rather than what I just can cover in 3,000 characters on a LinkedIn post, right? So we have customers who have SDRs in their founder's profile and track who engages and who doesn't, and use it to then fuel their outbound, or who use pieces of content that resonated and use it in their outbound messages, right? Like there's lots of examples here. We had a customer who use some of their best videos as a pre-roll to the webinars that they were hosting, right? Because there's always some period of time where people trickle in and you just kind of wait, and most people just have like a countdown timer, and they decided to just use some of the messaging that they know works and resonates with people and use that as the pre-roll to the webinar, right? So like all of these are ideas, but that's what I find both within our customers and within other people that I interview. They don't see it as an isolated thing. They see it as a piece of a puzzle, and they try to figure out how they make this a program, right? And integrate it with their outbound and with their messaging and with their positioning. I think Shield is a super important tool, or in general analytics. I would say it can never be used in isolation, because what I just shared, that specific post, if I had just looked at Shield and looked at the top level analytics of how many views and likes and comments that post had, I would have just said, this is nothing extraordinary. This is actually below average. And it's only that qualitative thing where we saw, oh, one of the 2 shares on that post was an ICP, and it got a bunch of engagement from super relevant people, to then say, we need to double down on this and leverage it, right? So always need to combine the qualitative with the quantitative. I just saw that, Ishan, you had asked a question. What was the main KPI for this client? Was it leads or building following, etc. initially? And did the main KPI change, or is it the same? Honestly, this is a little bit of a tough question, because obviously what customers in the end always care about is that this drives business outcomes, right? And the way that you generally measure business outcomes is you get leads, and then those leads turn into opportunities, and then those turn into customers, right? And you book revenue. Now, the problem is 2 things. One, we work with a lot of customers who sell into the enterprise or into the mid-market. So they often have sales cycles that are 9 or 12 months. And so there's a massive lag between starting to post and actually booking revenue. The second thing is, I think a lot of people are not familiar with the concept. I posted about it before, I call them marketing cycles. Everyone's familiar with sales cycles, and most can give you an answer of how long their sales cycle is. But a sales cycle measures how long, on average, does it take from the first meeting you have with a prospect until they sign the contract and they become a customer. And again, that can be 12 months in an enterprise deal cycle. But there is a marketing cycle that happens before that, which is essentially the period of time that is from the moment that someone hears about you for the very first time in their lives, to raising their hand and saying, I would like to talk to you and book a call, book a sales call, request a demo, that is often also many months of time that happen here, because no enterprise buyer ever saw one LinkedIn post by a random person they've never heard of, and even if they liked it, immediately go ahead and request a demo. What they do is they get to know that person. They say, okay, this person clearly knows a thing or two. Let me follow along. Then they see a couple posts and they say, okay, this person, I respect them. They really seem to be an expert. Let me look into their product. Okay, let me actually understand the product in an enterprise context. That usually takes time. Then they go look at some alternatives. Then they go get some internal buy-in to understand, is there even some need for us right now to explore a solution like that? And only once all of that happens, then they go ahead and book a demo, right? And so obviously leads, prospect demos matter, and we do install self-reported attribution when we can with customers, which is kind of one way to measure this. I would say, again, the most successful customers that we have, and again, people that I interview on the podcast, are those who understand that this is the goal here, is to build trust and credibility. That is the leading indicator. And the lagging indicator is that you will then get inbound and leads and demos. But it is not linear. You will not perfectly be able to measure and attribute it, because, again, in an enterprise sales cycle, someone might follow you on LinkedIn for 6 months, and then eventually Google your company name and book a demo. And unless you ask them on a sales call, you might not know that it was the 6 months of following you on LinkedIn. Plus, it's that and a bunch of other things. It's probably a webinar that you did, and the salesperson probably did a good job, and you have some important information on your website, and you maybe attended a conference that they went to. So what KPIs can I set to measure trust? Ooh, that's an interesting question. I don't measure trust. I would say, now that I think about it, a super strong indicator is, let me give it a name. It's non-customer referrals. So it's when you start getting referrals from people who are not your customers. Meaning, like, we just recently had a demo booked on our website, and we have self-reported attribution where we ask people, how did you hear about us? And that person said Pavilion. And Pavilion is a private community of CMOs and CROs. And so on the sales call that I had with this prospect, I asked them, tell me more about Pavilion. Like, how did it come up? And so that person shared with me a screenshot of the exact message that someone sent, which was essentially, this person who came inbound is a CMO. They posted a message in this private community saying, hey, we're kind of exploring LinkedIn thought leadership. Does anyone have any tips or resources or anyone I should talk to? And someone else replied to that and said, you should go talk to Finn. And this person is not a customer. This person is just someone who's been consuming my content for, I would say, probably the last year and a half. And clearly my content built so much trust with this person that they felt absolutely comfortable sending someone our way. And I think that is trust, right? And so again, I don't think you can capture that easily in some dashboard, but I think that's an indicator of trust. If you get non-customer referral, that's indicator of trust for your content, right? Obviously, if customers give you referrals, that's an indicator that, you have a great product and a great experience, which is also trust, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your content builds trust, right? There's trust plus than actually a pain point or a need. So the changes that I want to make for 2025 are, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, both in context of my content and for customers, is what is my competitive advantage when it comes to creating content? Because I think we've reached a stage where it's become so crowded, so noisy, so many people create content that just doing it, like just going out there and just creating some videos is probably not enough anymore. Now, I will caveat that with, I think it really, really depends on your industry, because in the end, you're competing with other people for the attention of the people that you're trying to reach. For example, if you're trying to reach operations leaders in manufacturing, you're competing with other people who are trying to get the attention of operations leaders in manufacturing. And I would argue that there's probably a lot less competition in that space versus trying to get the attention of the CEO of a B2B SaaS company with 200 employees, or of the CMO or CRO of a given company, right? Like SaaS and marketing, go-to-market, sales is probably the most crowded space on LinkedIn. So you always need to put it in perspective of who else is already creating content around this topic for this kind of persona. But we are unfortunately in a very crowded space. We talk on LinkedIn about LinkedIn to SaaS companies, and specifically the founders and the marketers within these companies. So like, I don't think it can get more competitive than that really. And so I've been thinking about what's my competitive advantage and how do I stand out in this crowd. And then I've seriously considered changing my ICP away from B2B SaaS into a less crowded space and focus on boring B2B services companies or consulting houses or, I don't know, IT implementers, right? Like, maybe, but I've already built so much momentum and such a network in this space that I'm really hesitant to do that. So where does my competitive advantage come from? And I think the source for me is a couple things. One, it's to keep staying in the trenches and be very close to my own content and to my own LinkedIn and to my own live event. Because as I'm in there and tinkering and experimenting and trying different post formats and trying different hooks and trying different ways to promote my live event and trying different ways to run it and trying different ways to run a sequence afterwards and trying different ways to track who engages, like all of those things generate insights, which I then can report on. Right. So I decided that I can never hand this off to someone on the team, right? Where I just say, you create my content, you like run my live event. Like, unless I'm in the trenches, I'm not generating these insights. That's one source. Second source is interviewing the best people in the space. And I think I've already done a decent job at that, right? I had Adam Robinson on and Chris Walker on and Jason Fried on, because I can ask them questions about what they're doing and how they're doing it that will help me inform my point of view, and I can then share and curate this content. So for me, it's really, as I think about our podcast and our live events, I'm trying to figure out how I can get bigger guests on, how I can get even more well-established people on, how can I get Alex Hormozy on this podcast, how can I get Gary Vee on this podcast, how can I get like, I don't know, who else is big, Harry Stebbings on this podcast, how can I get Jason Lemkin on this podcast, like, because the more advanced the person that I'm interviewing is, the more advanced the insights that I can get from them that I can then use in my own content. And then I think the third lever is, and this is what I decided to do, is to just literally prioritize it more, and spend more time. Because I think as a space becomes more and more crowded and more people create content for the same kind of person around the same kind of topic, more and more you need to raise the bar in terms of quality. And quality is not, having better video production and fancier cuts and whatever that is. It's really quality of insight. So how proprietary, how in-depth is the thing that I'm sharing to my audience? And what that means for me specifically is two things. One, just block off more time to spend on crafting and writing and thinking about and ideating and editing my own content. Right now, I have a 2-hour block every day to create content. And I've not been able to stick to it every day, but that's the goal. And it's maybe even posting less, but spending more time per piece of content to really make it unique and in-depth and proprietary, the information that I'm sharing. And it does take thinking it through, right? Like, I think this is also what I realized is when a space is still uncrowded and there's not a lot of people creating content, if you have somewhat of an expertise, if you have somewhat of, some background and you have customers and you've been in business for a couple of years, it's pretty straightforward to create pretty decent content, right? 7 out of 10 content. Someone can just ask you a question and someone asks me a question of like, hey, like how can someone get more likes on a LinkedIn post? And the answer that I give is probably decent, that I give off the cuff. But will my answer be different and better if instead of giving my off the cuff answer, I just sit down with a blank piece of paper with that question and I just think it through for 30 minutes? Probably, right? And so that just means prioritizing more time actually thinking something through and creating content that way. And I think I'll also be prioritizing more longer form solo content. Like, I think one of the mistakes that I've been making a little bit too much towards the end of 2024, especially with the podcast and the live events, and this is an example of me trying to change this, is to always have guests and always interview people and always put them on the pedestal as they're the expert and I'm just this guy asking questions, which if I'm interviewing someone like Adam Robinson or Jason Fried, like 100% they know more than I do. But there's probably a thing or two where I have an insight on something that they don't know yet, or where I've had an experience that maybe they're not aware of. And I've not done a good enough job of trying to insert myself either into a conversation in an interview that I have, or just have solo episodes where it's just me sharing my own lessons and my own expertise and my own process. Because in the end, yes, if I interview Adam Robinson and Chris Walker and people see that, they're like, okay, he clearly understands some things and he asks some good questions and clearly he's doing something right if he's getting these people come on his podcast. But in the end, they're not hiring Adam Robinson or Chris Walker. They're hiring me and Project 33, right? So I need to be sharing my own original proprietary, again, thoughts and ideas. So